A very good morning to you. I'm Howard Feldman. This is the Sunday Synthesis Podcast with me, Howard Feldman, and Dr. Anton Marburg. He is a pulmonologist, he is a physician, and he is specializing in COVID-19. We bring you this podcast every week. We answer your questions, and if you do want to see them on a regular basis, don't forget to subscribe below. Dr. Anton Marburg, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good in you. Much better frame of mind, much better mood. I think people are much happier at this point in time with what we're seeing relating COVID. We won't discuss the weather. That's a completely different situation.
Nor Liverpool.
But we will definitely discuss Liverpool. Discuss Liverpool. Don't get me started so early in the show. Got to click my fingers for that one.
I don't want you to peak too early. Right,
exactly,
I get it.
Just like my team. Right, okay.
Right, exactly.
So, onto a serious note, we're currently sitting at 106,359,614 cases worldwide, with 2,320,862 deaths and 78 million cases resolved. The United States has 27.5 million cases with 473,000 deaths. And South Africa has 1,473,700 cases with 46,180 deaths and 3,184 new cases in the last 24 hours, with a test positivity rate of 9.6%, so we're below the 10% mark, a recovery rate of 91%, and 87,023 active cases. Gauteng has 4,365 cases in hospital with COVID, with 817 in ICU and 501 on ventilators. The hospital changes throughout South Africa with COVID. The admitted cases are down by 2,698. The ICU cases are down by 339, and the ventilated cases are down by 193. So overall, we're seeing a great decrease in the number of cases, and it's a very positive sign what we're seeing.
In terms of the hospital that you function at, where you work, what are the numbers looking like there?
The numbers have decreased dramatically. About 2 weeks ago, we were running 5 wards in ICU or high care. We're now down to 1 ward, 1 ICU, and 1 PUI unit. The numbers are dramatically down. I think we're below 29 at the moment this weekend, which is a very good number. It's still high, obviously, but the numbers are down.
How do we go from 22,000 new cases in a day down to an average of 3,500 to 4,500? How can you explain that?
Look, it's a very difficult phenomenon to understand, but you've got to understand that these lockdowns, albeit intrusive, albeit terrible, whatever, they definitely work. They definitely help with the numbers, the wearing of the masks, the social distancing, and then once again, these major events come after major holidays, super spreading events, people congregating together. When you come back into the reality of work, of school, of all these things, people don't sort of get together as much, and people aren't as on top of each other like they were on holidays, and the numbers therefore do come down.
Okay, and so right now we've definitely passed our second peak. We're well into almost a comfortable dip. Do we anticipate a third wave?
We definitely do, unfortunately. Towards the end of April, beginning of May, somewhere around that time, don't hold me to it exactly, but we've got to understand a very important thing. We don't yet have a vaccine available for the entire population or the entire community of South Africa. Therefore, we are not able to protect ourselves adequately despite the social distancing and the masks. There will be other super spreader events. There will be other events that precede us getting more infections and another spread. And until we've got that herd immunity, until the whole population is covered, we are going to get a third wave, and hopefully not, but even possibly a fourth wave until we are covered effectively.
All right, let's talk about vaccines, because lots of comments on that. The vaccines arrived, the first lot arrived in South Africa on Monday. I'm not sure if you were at the airport or not, but it did arrive Monday. When are you anticipating, as a frontline worker, having access to the first shot?
So I was the guy at the airport with the placard saying, pick me, pick me. The truth is, we have registered on the health department's website for the vaccine. We got told we'll be sent information thereafter, and that was at the beginning of last week. So we have no idea when we're getting the vaccine. We are hoping to get it in the next week or two, once it's gone through procurement, safety testing, and a few vials that are being stripped to the side for other people. So hopefully we'll be getting it relatively soon.
Okay, let's just talk about the different vaccines, what is available, what is, there were comments about over 65 not being recommended to use some vaccines. Just give us an overview of the different vaccines and what the studies are starting to show.
Okay, so we know about the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. Those are the mRNA vaccines that we don't have available here for many reasons, obviously price and of course storage. Storage has to be at a much lower temperature than we can accommodate in major centers in South Africa. The Moderna vaccine has been shown to have a better efficacy against the variant from South Africa, and the Pfizer vaccine as well is showing a good efficacy against that and a good relative effect against people who have been infected with this variant. The other vaccines that we know about are the Sputnik V or the Sputnik 5, however you want to pronounce it, the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccine. What we've got available in the next week or two, hopefully, is the AstraZeneca vaccine. This is coming from the company that produced it in India. And we know that it's made from a weakened version of a common cold virus, the adenovirus, which is from chimpanzees, which has been modified to look like a coronavirus. And therefore, once it's injected, it causes antibodies and it makes your immune system attack the coronavirus when it gets into your body. Now, there's a major reluctance amongst people to approve the AstraZeneca vaccine in people over the age of 65. And the important thing to note is this is not about safety. We know it's safe. It's about efficacy. The tests that were done in people below the age of 65. There was an extremely small cohort or data group of 660 people on whom the vaccine was tested. And of those 660 people over the age of 65, only 2 got COVID-19. So the issue, as I said, is not the actual overall AstraZeneca vaccine itself, because we know that it's a good vaccine. But from what studies are showing us with this variant, it is not great against mild or moderate disease. However, it does prevent hospitalization and it does prevent death. And that being said, I would definitely take it myself as soon as I get it, and I would recommend it for people over the age of 65 if they're able to get it at this point in time.
So in other words, really, what are we that worried about? We're worried about hospitalization and death. If somebody has to get a mild version of it, hopefully then they'll be all right. So therefore, it does provide that protection, and it's not dangerous for people over 65, because I think that's some of the confusion, is that when we hear that, we think, oh my word, people over 65 are at risk if they take this vaccine, if they get this vaccine.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point you're making. It's not a safety issue; it's an efficacy issue related to the data. And I think another important point to make while we're discussing the vaccine is just because you've had the vaccine doesn't mean you can't get infected, that you can't be transmitted or you can't transmit the actual virus itself. You still can. The numbers in Israel amongst the people actually vaccinated, there's a 0.6% people or 0.6% variation of people who actually got infected after they got the vaccine, but the degree of severity is minimal. It's basically like an influenza vaccine, and you get a very mild case of influenza and you do get sick from it. It is not a curative form of treatment. It is a vaccine that helps prevent the spread, hopefully, and helps decrease the severity of the infection.
Okay, so I think that's a very, very important distinction. At this stage, do we know what other vaccines will be coming into South Africa? I don't know.
There's talk of the Johnson & Johnson, which is a one-dose vaccine, as well as
just the Johnson.
Pfizer. Carrying on, as well as the Pfizer vaccine, which is hopefully going to be coming here as well, but that also depends on the availability of storage facilities. We're still waiting for further studies on the Johnson & Johnson to see if it will be viable to be produced here.
But I thought the results of the Johnson & Johnson one were quite disappointing.
They are, and they are looking at it whether or not it needs a second booster or it needs a booster to help with the efficacy of that. Remember, efficacy doesn't mean that a vaccine is not safe. Efficacy means that in a group of, let's say, 100 people, 95 people were safe from the vaccine. Whereas you look at the efficacy of the AstraZeneca, up to 70% of people were safe from the virus. And with the second shot, 82%. So it doesn't definitely mean that you're not going to be safe or you're not going to be protected from it, but there's a small proportion of people that might not develop antibodies from it, and they might do so after getting the booster, and time will tell and see what happens with that.
A lot of questions around people who have had COVID-19. Should they still get the vaccine? Somebody sending me a message saying his wife is a doctor. She's actually had it twice. Should she still get? Should she have the vaccine?
So the answer to that is short and simple: yes. But we do know that if you've had COVID-19, if you had the SARS-CoV-2 virus, you should wait up to about 3 months before you get the vaccine. So it's very important, and that's got to do with your antibody response, and it's got to do with the hyperimmune response from it. So you definitely should get the booster. You should check your antibody titers. That's the amount of antibody you've got to see if you have a good effect from it, and then decide if you need a booster or if you need both shots.
All right, and I think that's obviously quite important. What is happening with treatment? Can we talk about the ivermectin story, and then look at where we are with other forms of treatment?
Right. So we know where we stand with ivermectin at this point in time with regards to SAHPRA having given compassionate use for the drug in South Africa. We still don't really know what that means. They're also taking no responsibility if you do, as a doctor, prescribe it, saying we've given compassionate use. You've got to tell people what the side effects are. You've got to decide if you're happy to use it. And most doctors are not happy to use it and are not being forced to use it because it's not what their treatment armamentarium involves, and they're not happy with it. But what's very interesting is this week, the company that stands to lose the most from this came out with the following statement. And this is from Merck, the company that actually produces ivermectin. And I'm going to read it. It says, no scientific basis for a potential therapeutic effect against COVID-19 from preclinical studies. There's no meaningful evidence for clinical activity or clinical efficacy in patients with COVID-19 disease. There's a concerning lack of safety data in the majority of studies. They further say, we do not believe that the data available supports the safety and efficacy of ivermectin beyond the doses of populations indicated for the drug's original use. So I still think we've got to be very careful with it. It's still not the magic bullet. We know that. You've got to be very careful with the doses you use. No one really knows the actual dose one should take. And we do know that it doesn't help with therapeutic cases and people who are extremely ill. It's not going to help. We've seen many people in our ICUs that are very sick who have taken and have died as a result of COVID-19 and having been on the actual ivermectin drug at very high doses. There are still at least 37 trials being done, and there are still trials to show if it might help with prophylaxis. As I say, we welcome these studies. We wait with bated breath. If something can help us, we'll take it with pleasure.
So even from a prophylaxis perspective, from a prevention perspective, it is not, there's nothing that's indicated at this point?
Not at this moment.
Okay. There were also lots of articles that came out from Israel, from Ichilov Hospital, over the last couple of days. I probably received it 30 to 40 times. It's all the same article from different publications. Not a lot of information, but a lot of positivity in terms of this treatment, which seems to be almost nebulized. Can you just give us some sense of what this is, and is it something that we celebrate?
God bless the Israelis. They always one step ahead, and they always come out with major studies. So what is this drug? It's called the ExoCD24 drug. They refuse to give it a name because that will just make it easier for people to remember. They say it's based on CD24 enriched exosomes, and it's meant to fight the cytokine storm that is associated with many of the COVID deaths. Remember, the cytokine storm is when the immune system goes into overdrive and starts attacking the body's healthy cells. And then the exosome is responsible for the cell-to-cell communication. In this case, they deliver the CD24 protein to the lungs, which apparently calms down the immune system. So there's a few problems with this at the moment. Number one, it's only been shown or tested in 30 people. That's a very small cohort of a study. It's a phase 1 study. The drug is reported to have no side effects. I don't know, I've never heard of a drug having no side effects. So I think there needs to be a lot more studies done on this. And then more importantly, it hasn't been discussed what other drugs were given at the same time. In other words, was remdesivir given? Was dexamethasone given? Was tocilizumab given? Was any of the vitamins given? There are too many unknowns at this moment, and we need to wait for further studies. We're very excited if it can do something, and we hope it does, but there needs to be far more studies. So it's not available yet. It's not available in South Africa. It's not available for commercial use in Israel. They still need to try it. They still need to test it, and we still need to wait for more information regarding this.
Why would they put out a statement so early on? I mean, it's we all are so desperate, you know, and Professor
Well, that's right.
made an interesting comment. He said every wave has its medication. So in the first wave, it was
hydroxychloroquine.
The second wave is ivermectin. And it's almost that we get ready for this miracle, as you said earlier, silver bullet each time round. It's actually really does. I mean, I'm hoping it is wonderful news, but it does speak to our desperation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is all about desperation. People are so desperate to get something, to get some positivity. We latch onto the smallest, most minuscule things. And I'm not saying we mustn't latch onto them. We need that positivity, but we've got to be very careful. The way we understand how trials are done, the way we understand what effects the medication can have, and for all those things I've said above, what it actually involves. So it's human nature. Human nature is to get excitable with small amounts of information and to try and make that into something better. And we just got to wait and see. We've got to be patient.
The second wave hit us particularly hard. The number of deaths around is absolutely staggering. Have there been any more studies in terms of the mortality rate through the second wave?
Look, as I said before, you know, when you discuss it with the academics, they all say that the second wave is no worse than the first wave. On the front line, there's no doubt that the second wave has been dramatic. It has been far worse than the first wave. The number of deaths have far exceeded the number we saw in the first wave. And that's speaking on a clinical basis. I'm not talking about people out of hospital, I'm talking about people in hospitals. There is no doubt that the number of deaths is dramatically higher than anything we saw in the first wave. I would go to say, if not double from what we saw in the first wave. And remember that the second wave is still not over. So we are still seeing deaths from the second wave, and they can't tabulate the numbers yet, but we are seeing a major increase regarding this.
What about the unexplained deaths? Because those numbers are very, very high. There's a lot of stories of, unfortunately, people in some of the aged homes dying, not necessarily diagnosed with COVID. Do you think that there is a link to these unexplained deaths in South Africa and around the world?
I think there's about 10 to 20,000 deaths a month that we just don't ascribe for, that we don't know about. And a lot of them could be ascribed to COVID-19, and they could be obviously due to other chronic conditions, but there's a lot of patients that aren't tested that are left just to be, and they could have events. They could have cardiac events, they could have neurological events secondary to COVID, and they were just thought to be a normal neurological or cardiac event unrelated.
Just a couple of questions. And I think you've kind of answered this, but if you could just go through this again. If I have the vaccine, am I protected? Do I need to wear a mask? Am I protected? What is the story there?
Yeah, I'm very happy to go through that again. When you have the first shot of the vaccine, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks to develop antibodies, and then hopefully, and this is also a very good question, is when you have the second shot, the booster, whether it will be in 4 weeks or whether it will be in 12 weeks, and that's also dependent on the amount of vaccine available and the immune response we're hoping for. Until you've had the second vaccine, you are not fully covered. And even once you've had the second vaccine, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks to cover yourself completely. You still need to wear your mask. You still need to social distance. Remember, we still need to wait for herd immunity. So even if you are covered yourself, you still can transmit the virus to other people. You may not get it yourself, or you may get it very weakly or very mildly, but you're still not 100% protected, but it hopefully prevents hospitalization and death, and those are the major endpoints.
is somebody who doesn't want to take the vaccine the same as an anti-vaxxer? Would you put them in the same category, given that these vaccines are relatively new? We don't know the long-term effects. One of our listeners saying something about ADE. I've never heard of ADE, but I mean, maybe you have. A possibility of ADE. Give me your thoughts on that.
Look, it's a slippery slope. Okay. I'm very strong pro-vaccine, and I've always said that with regards to influenza, with pneumococcal vaccine, with all our routine vaccines. I believe that someone who doesn't want to take the vaccine is then known as an anti-vaxxer. It is our duty as people to take the vaccine to protect ourselves and to protect each other. We can't use that statement that it's a new vaccine. This is a new century we're in. It's a new time we're in compared to what was done years ago with science. The fact that they've managed to manufacture all of these vaccines within a year of the actual virus coming about is revolutionary, it's scientific, and they are done under strict control measures where they look for safety, they look for all the side effects. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years' time. We can't predict that. But right now, and once again, I'll say it, I will vaccinate myself, my whole family, my extended family, and all my friends. And it is extremely important to be vaccinated, and we do not have time for anti-vaxxers.
Right. And Belinda wants to know, should teenagers be allowed to return to school if if a parent has Addison's disease, asthma, lupus, etc.?
Yes. The answer is short and simple, yes. People are at school, are protecting themselves. They're in a safe environment. They're wearing their masks. They're in their bubbles. The answer is definitely yes.
Right. And of course, places of worship are also reopened this week. Your comment about that?
I think it's an excellent job. The places of worship are extremely safe. They're keeping to the numbers. They're keeping to the ventilatory requirements. Everyone's wearing the masks. People are socially distanced, and people are keeping to the rules. People are being very strict about it. So it is about time that they open the places of worship. I think it's the right idea, and I think it's the right way going forward.
Right, provided people, of course, are adhering to the systems and to the rules that have been.
I think most places of worship have got sort of control measures intact that they can actually follow the rules properly.
Right, absolutely. The good news is what?
So we know that school went well this week for the people that are back. We know the numbers are down. South Africa has recorded its 23rd consecutive drop in active COVID-19 cases. And City Power has implemented 2-hour load shedding instead of 4 hours. Got to be positive about something. And to quote, and this is a very important quote from the father of Liverpool, Bill Shankly, a football team is like a piano. You need 8 men to carry it and 3 who can play the damn thing. And our piano now is being finely tuned. Watch the space. The fat lady hasn't sung yet. And well done to the other Merseyside team for making a joke of the other team they played last night. And with all that being said, we wish you a safe week. We wish you a strong week. Carry on doing the measures, carry on doing all the non-pharmaceutical measures and interventions, and we'll see you next week, and be safe and be good.
Thank you. I'm Howard Feldman. This has been the Sunday Synthesis podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Keep sending us your questions. Your questions give us an indication as to what it is that you are looking for information on. Have a great week. Be safe, be kind, and God bless.